On a planet where no one can lie, one human dared to make a goddess confess her desire. This is not just truth, this is temptation made real. HFY Vanguard humanity, always the exception. The transport shuttle sliced through the blue atmosphere of Veritania like a silver blade cutting through silk. Below the surface shimmered with crystalline cities that gleamed in soft turquoise light, their symmetry almost unnerving. To the untrained eye, this was paradise, a planet where deceit did not exist, where citizens lived without suspicion, courts without lies, and governments without corruption. To Dave Truman, it was a playground waiting to be exploited. He leaned against the viewport, his reflection staring back, dark hair slicked back with effortless charm, eyes too quick, too calculating, for someone who claimed to be a cultural exchange visitor. His suit, black with electric blue seams, hugged him like confidence itself. On Earth, that look got him kicked out of diplomatic banquets. Out here, it made him look mysterious, exotic, dangerous in the right way. The intercom chimed a melodic female voice speaking in Veritanian and then in perfect galactic standard. "Welcome to Veritania, home of the truthful. May your words be as pure as your intentions." Dave chuckled under his breath. Pure intentions, huh? Guess I'm screwed already. The shuttle descended toward the central spaceport, a structure shaped like an open lotus of glass and gold glowing under the twin suns. As they landed, the passengers disembarked in quiet order, every face serene, open, unguarded. No one avoided eye contact. No one checked for pickpockets. No one lied because they couldn't. Veritanian biology had long ago evolved past deception. Their neural pathways simply lacked the circuitry for it. Lying caused immediate physiological distress, the eyes dilated unevenly, skin flushed with discoloration. Speech stuttered uncontrollably. Generations ago, when they discovered the cause, they embraced it. Honesty became religion. They even called their planet the cradle of clarity. Dave stepped into the customs hall, inhaling the sweet, faintly floral air. The architecture was maddeningly beautiful. Spiraling glass panels, silver veins pulsing with energy patterns that changed color with every spoken truth. A customs officer with pale green skin approached him, tablet in hand, his translucent veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. "Purpose of visit?" the officer asked in flawless monotone sincerity. Dave smiled, the kind that disarmed suspicion before it was even born. "Cultural exchange. I'm here to learn from the honest and share the wonders of human culture." Not a total lie. He was there to learn about loopholes, about vulnerabilities, about profit margins. The officer tapped his screen, unconcerned. "Duration of stay indefinite," Dave replied smoothly. "Until I find something worth staying for." The Veritanian nodded as if that were the most normal answer in the galaxy. "Enjoy your stay. Truth be your guide." "Oh, it always is," Dave said, flashing a grin that would have made a priest suspicious if priests here had any concept of suspicion. The city unfolded around him like a vision from a dream. Streets of glowing quartz, floating public transports, shaped like water droplets, every building humming with soft resonance. No guards, no locks, no fear. Honesty had made Veritania efficient, and Dave noted incredibly predictable. He checked into an upscale lodging facility in the entertainment district, where the windows looked out over fountains that changed hue with the emotional tone of the crowd. At the reception, a lavender-skinned clerk asked if he preferred a tranquil truth ambiance or an energetic sincerity suite. "Whichever comes with more beautiful neighbors," Dave said. She blinked, confusion and faint amusement flickered across her features. "You seek companionship, I seek understanding," he replied, voice smooth as plasma glass. "Then the entertainment level will suit you," she said, genuinely happy to help. "Honest connections are easily made there." He smirked. "I'm counting on it." Later that evening, the district came alive. Neon sigils floated in the air like phosphorescent birds, each representing a local establishment. Cafes, theaters, debate houses where citizens gathered to discuss ethics without ever exaggerating a single point. Dave took a seat at a central bar glowing soft blue, ordered something that resembled whiskey, but shimmered faintly, and observed. Veritanians were gorgeous humanoid, yes, but with radiant pastel skin that shifted tones with emotion. Every word they spoke was naked truth. Every glance was unfiltered curiosity. When one said you are attractive, it wasn't a line, it was a biological declaration. No wonder the Federation called this place the most peaceful planet in the known sectors. Peaceful, Dave thought, and utterly defenseless. A group of locals laughed nearby, the sound like wind chimes struck by a soft breeze. He listened as one of them recounted a personal story with complete vulnerability, unashamed of embarrassment. Honesty had made them fearless, but it had also made them blind. They couldn't imagine someone pretending. For a man like Dave, that was an opportunity wrapped in silk. He tested the waters. When the bartender asked, "What brings you to Veritania?" Dave said, "I'm an intergalactic operative on leave." A statement so bold, so dramatic, it should have raised alarms anywhere else. Here the bartender simply nodded with admiration. "That sounds dangerous. You must be very brave." Dave raised his glass. Occupational hazard. He watched the ripples of blue light around the room pulse in sync with conversation frequencies. Even the architecture responded to honesty. Every color shift represented sincerity metrics. Fascinating, he thought. If the walls reacted to truth, could they also react to lies? He made a note to test that later. As he left the bar, a soft drizzle began to fall. Veritania's rain wasn't water, but microscopic energy condensation sparkling like falling dust. He walked through it without care, letting the glow reflect off his suit. The air carried the faint hum of harmonic resonance, as if the planet itself whispered, "We are pure. We are clean. We are safe." Dave smiled, a predator walking into a temple full of saints. He'd conned ambassadors, seduced heiresses, and sold fake relics to entire colonies. But this was something new. A world where even the concept of deceit was mythological. In his temporary quarters, minimalist, circular, all glass and soft light, he stood before the mirror. His reflection smirked back. "All right, Truman," he murmured. "Time to make history." He activated his datapad, setting up a few false credentials. Name Agent David Truman, Galactic Intelligence Mission at classified status, heroic operative recently recovered from injuries during the Andromeda conflict. He even added a fabricated Federation insignia to his wristband. As he worked, his mind raced with possibilities. These people couldn't lie, but that also meant they couldn't suspect. No poker face, no deception filters. Their entire social structure was based on taking words at face value. He'd built a legend, a grand narrative of heroism, charm, and self-sacrifice. The kind of story these wide-eyed truth worshippers adored. And when they opened their wallets, their hearts, their trust, he'd be there to take it all. Outside, the twin moons of Veritania rose, bathing the city in pale silver light. Dave stepped onto the balcony, gazing down at the streets below. The hum of honest laughter drifted upward, lean yet strangely innocent. He exhaled, tasting the sweetness of the air. For a fleeting moment, something like guilt brushed his mind, quickly dismissed. "Honesty's overrated anyway," he muttered. "If the universe wanted saints, it wouldn't have invented humans." A distant temple bell rang, a tone that resonated through the entire capital, signaling the evening reflection hour. Every Veritanian paused, eyes closed, whispering silent affirmations of truth. Dave watched from above, the only one standing still. Then under the luminous skies of Veritania, he whispered the first lie ever spoken on that planet. "I'm here to make this world better." And somewhere deep within him, the universe took note. The next morning, the Veritanian capital gleamed like a jewel beneath the rising twin suns. Everything about the city radiated serenity, the way traffic flowed without noise, how people spoke without haste, how no one ever looked over their shoulder. To Dave Truman, it was both beautiful and unnerving. He'd grown up on worlds where honesty was a weakness, not a virtue. Here it was oxygen. And he was about to turn that oxygen into fuel. His first step was blending in, or rather standing out just enough to seem important. In a place where no one could fake confidence, true charisma was like a superpower. Dave dressed to impress, sleek black suit with those signature electric blue seams, polished boots, wristband pulsing faint Federation credentials. The air of mystery was deliberate, calculated, irresistible. By mid-afternoon, he was seated at a rooftop cafe that overlooked the Plaza Purity Veritania's social hub, where citizens exchanged stories in full emotional honesty. No filters, no acting. Every face reflected their inner world. Dave watched a group of artists describing their dreams, the colors of their skin subtly shifting from violet to gold, to pale blue as emotions changed. Fascinating, he thought. These people wore their souls on their skin. He finished his coffee, a syrupy drink that glowed faintly pink, and smiled as his next move walked right into his field of view. A group of Veritanian women, radiant and curious, gathered near the terrace rail, stealing glances at him. They whispered their tones, chiming like crystalline bells. One of them, tall lavender-skinned eyes shimmering with light like liquid quartz, finally approached. "You're not from here," she said, voice melodious and sincere. Veritanians couldn't flirt the way humans did, but curiosity was their version of attraction. Dave turned, flashing his practiced grin. "That obvious?" "Your colors," she said, tilting her head. "No Veritanian skin carries warmth like that. And your eyes, they move too quickly." "You're human, aren't you? Guilty as charged," he replied smoothly. Dave Truman, intergalactic operative recently stationed in the Andromeda sector. She blinked, impressed. The term operative carried weight across the galaxy. To most it meant heroism, covert missions, diplomacy, danger. On Veritania it was pure legend. "How thrilling," she said, genuinely awed. "An operative, what brings you here?" Dave leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Let's just say, after what happened in the Nebula Rift, I needed some time away. Somewhere honest, somewhere peaceful." It wasn't just the words, it was the delivery. The subtle sigh between syllables, the haunted look carefully crafted behind his eyes. He'd rehearsed this lie so many times it felt like truth even to him. And that was the key to a perfect believe your own fiction. "I'm Alara," she said softly. "If peace is what you seek, you found it here. I'm counting on that." Within an hour, he'd been invited to a private gathering that evening, a social salon for Veritania's truth speakers, philosophers, and innovators, who met to exchange insights. Dave smiled to himself. Perfect stage. That night, the entertainment district glowed brighter than ever. Every establishment shimmered with transparent walls. Music carried not by sound, but by waves of light that resonated directly through the body. Dave stepped into the salon with calm authority, letting the curious stares feed his performance. Dozens of Veritanians gathered around crystal tables sipping iridescent drinks that pulsed in rhythm with their emotions. The room was alive with honesty and utterly defenseless against charm. Agent Truman Alara announced, her skin glowing pale rose with excitement. "Everyone, this is the operative I told you about. He's from Earth." A hush fell over the room, not from suspicion, but reverence. Humans were exotic, unpredictable, almost mythic to these people. And one who claimed to be an operative, that was the stuff of legends. Dave played his part flawlessly. He spun tales of interstellar espionage, heroic rescues, and close calls in asteroid fields. Each fabrication layered with just enough believable detail, the names of real planets, military phrases stolen from Federation broadcasts, half-truths stitched into full illusions. He described negotiating peace between warring species, dismantling pirate rings, saving diplomats under fire. Every story a performance, every gesture calculated. The Veritanians hung on his every word, their color patterns pulsing in collective awe. One young Veritanian male leaned forward, eyes wide. "You faced pirates in person," Dave smirked. "Not just faced outwitted. Pirates can smell fear. So I gave them something better, overconfidence." A ripple of admiration spread through the crowd. Even the walls shimmered with a soft blue hue, a color representing collective belief. He took a sip of his glowing drink, savoring the irony. They built a world on honesty, he thought, and all it takes is one lie to rule it. Alara's hand brushed his arm. "You must have stories you can't tell," she whispered, eyes wide with innocent wonder. "Most of them," he said with a wink. "But maybe, one day." By the end of the evening, Dave had everything he wanted. Invitations to 3 exclusive social circles. The admiration of half a dozen high-status Veritanians. And the most important contact of all, a meeting request from Torin Vex, a wealthy industrial magnate with connections deep inside Veritania's defense network. Torin's message was brief, polite, and dangerous. Mr. Truman, your reputation precedes you. I believe we could make each other useful. Dave's grin widened. This was the big score. The con of the century was about to begin. The next morning, he met Torin Vex in an office that looked like a cathedral built from glass and light. The man himself was tall, skin a pale shade of green, his expression unnervingly calm. Operative Truman, Torin said, extending a hand. Or do you prefer Agent Dave is fine, he replied, taking the handshake. Titles make people nervous. Indeed, Torin said, and you are not here to make people nervous, are you? Dave smiled. Depends on the mission. Torin's eyes gleamed faintly. I have a problem, one that requires discretion. Discretion is my middle name. A lie, Torin said casually, not accusingly, just factually. Veritanians couldn't detect lies, but they often assumed hyperbole was literal truth. But I appreciate the sentiment. You are direct. That's good. He explained his issue, a possible data breach in one of his corporate facilities, sensitive research related to planetary defense systems. He wanted Dave's operative expertise to help identify the leak. The pay, astronomical. Dave almost laughed. The irony was too delicious. A man pretending to be a spy hired by someone who didn't understand what lying meant. Consider it done, he said smoothly. Torin nodded. I believe you. Few beings could say that phrase and mean it so clearly. Dave kept a straight face. Oh, if only you knew. Over the following days, Dave became a sensation. His legend spread through Veritania's social circles like wildfire. Everyone wanted to meet the mysterious, human operative, the man who risked his life for peace yet spoke with humble charm. He was invited to lectures, galas, diplomatic dinners. He told stories of heroism so vivid that even he began to feel the ghost of truth inside them. It was intoxicating, not just the money or the admiration, but the belief. Being believed felt better than any drug. But something else began to stir within him unease. Every lie he told on this planet carried no resistance, no pushback. It slid through the air like silk, and that terrified him more than being caught ever could. Late one night, after yet another lavish party, he stood alone on his balcony again, looking over the flawless city. His wristband glowed faintly with credit transfers enough to buy a small moon. He should have been elated. Instead, he whispered to the night, "They think I'm a hero. God help them if I ever start believing it too." The breeze carried a faint chime from the Temple of Truth. Somewhere out there, a new invitation awaited one that would change the game entirely. The message blinked on his datapad, elegant and simple. Professor Lay Nix requests your presence at the governor's reception. Subject: cultural dynamics between truth-bound and deceptive species. Dave raised an eyebrow, feeling a thrill he couldn't quite name. A scholar studying deception on a planet that couldn't lie. He smiled slowly. Well, he murmured, pocketing the device that sounds like fun. And so, with the stars of Veritania glittering above him, the greatest liar in the galaxy prepared to meet the one woman who might finally see through every mask he'd ever worn. The governor's reception shimmered like a living galaxy suspended inside glass. Floating light orbs drifted among guests dressed in translucent fabrics, their skin colors glowing in conversation, a kaleidoscope of sincerity. The air vibrated with quiet harmony, the sound of a world utterly convinced of its own honesty. Dave Truman adjusted his collar, glanced at his reflection in a crystalline panel, and smiled. He looked every bit the dignified operative he pretended to be, posture, confident expression, sincere eyes alive with purpose. In this crowd that made him unstoppable. He had spent years perfecting the art of the con, but Veritania had taken the game to another level. Here, deception was a miracle, an act of magic no one could even imagine. And tonight he would perform for his most interesting audience, yet Professor Lay Nix. He spotted her before she saw him, or maybe she already had. She stood near a panoramic window gazing out over the Capitol's luminous skyline, a glass of amber liquid in hand. Her skin was a soft turquoise that seemed to glow from within her white hair cascading in shimmering waves past her shoulders. Unlike most Veritanians, she didn't try to blend in. She radiated quiet authority. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped him. It was her composure. Everyone else in the room broadcast their emotions like billboards. Lays were controlled, muted like a melody only she could hear. Dave approached all practiced charm and timing. Professor Nix, I presume. She turned eyes the color of frozen lightning fixing on him. You presume correctly? You must be the human operative I've heard so much about. Depends on who you've been listening to, he said, smiling. Most of what people say about me isn't true. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. A curious statement for someone whose reputation is built on truth. Touché. He chuckled softly. On my world, we call that modesty. On mine, we call it contradiction. Her tone was calm, almost amused, not hostile, not naive. And that was what intrigued him. Every other Veritanian he'd met accepted his words without question. Lennox didn't. She gestured toward a quieter balcony beyond the reception hall. Shall we continue this cultural exchange somewhere less performative? Lead the way, Professor. The balcony overlooked the city towers of transparent crystal, rising like frozen waves beneath the twin moons. The view was breathtaking. But for Dave, the true spectacle was the woman beside him. You study cross-species behavior, he said. Must be fascinating analyzing how people from different worlds think. I don't just study how they think, Lay corrected. I study how they believe. Truth perception, honesty, they vary by biology, not morality. To my people, lying is physically impossible. To yours, it's cultural. Cultural, Dave laughed. That's one way to put it. I mean, no offense, she said, her tone analytical, not judgmental. Humans evolved with deception as a survival mechanism. To conceal, to strategize, to love. He blinked. To love. Love requires illusion, she said simply. You idealize. You promise forever knowing you cannot deliver it. You exaggerate the importance of someone to give your emotions structure. That's a form of lying, one that even your poets celebrate. Dave leaned against the railing, impressed. You're not like most Veritanians I've met. I should hope not, she said. I teach anthropology, not faith. Her voice had that rhythm, half music, half weapon. And for the first time since landing on this planet, Dave felt the faintest twinge of unease. They talked for hours, their words weaving between philosophy and flirtation. Dave told her half-true stories about his missions, testing how close he could walk to the edge without falling. She listened, never interrupting, never fully believing, and that was what made it intoxicating. Every other Veritanian swallowed his lies whole. Lay dissected them, admired their structure, questioned their craftsmanship. She treated deceit the way an artist studies form and shadow. At one point, she asked, when you lie, do you feel guilt? Dave took a slow sip of his drink. Only when I get caught. Then you must have an excellent conscience, she said dryly. He laughed almost genuinely. And what about you? Ever wish you could lie? Her gaze lingered on him a moment longer than comfort allowed. Sometimes. Not for advantage, for kindness. Truth can wound as easily as it heals. The honesty in her tone unsettled him more than any interrogation could. As the reception wound down, the atmosphere softened. Guests drifted away, their colors dimming into shades of calm satisfaction. On the balcony, the light from the moons bathed Lay in silver, outlining her silhouette like a sculpture carved from light. Dave took a step closer, emboldened by silence. You know, for a society obsessed with truth, this place throws some excellent parties. She smiled faintly. That's because we have nothing to hide. That's what makes it so easy, he said under his breath. Her head tilted. Easy for what? He hesitated, then deflected with his trademark grin. To fall in love with it. She studied him quietly, as if mapping the micro-movements of his face. Then with an almost imperceptible nod, she said, You're very practiced at saying what people want to hear. Occupational hazard. Indeed, her eyes glimmered with something like amusement. But tell me, Agent Truman, have you ever told a lie so beautiful you started to believe it yourself? That question hit deeper than she could know. He opened his mouth, found no answer, and instead looked out at the city. All the best ones are like that, he said finally. Later that night, she invited him to her residence for further discussion. Dave knew what that meant. He followed her through luminous streets, his pulse faster than he cared to admit. Lay's home was minimalist circular architecture that felt more organic than built. Transparent walls glowed softly, the color shifting with her emotions, curiosity, caution, desire. You live alone, he asked. Yes, it helps me think. Dangerous habit, he teased. Thinking. She ignored the joke, stepping closer. Tell me something, Dave Truman. When you lie, what do you see in people's eyes? Hope, he said, instantly. They want to believe something more beautiful than reality. And me, she asked softly, what do you see in my eye? For once, he didn't have an answer ready. Her gaze was steady, unwavering, not gullible, not naive, but curious, challenging. I see someone who already knows the truth, he admitted. Lay's lips curved slightly. Good. Then you won't mind if I prove it. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't passion, not yet. It was study and experiment, a slow, deliberate collision of truth and pretense. Her lips were cool, tasting faintly of citrus and starlight. Dave's instincts screamed to stay detached, but when her fingers slid along the line of his jaw, all those instincts fell silent. It was supposed to be a performance. It became something else. Hours later, in the quiet aftermath, the two of them lay entangled on soft white fabric that glowed with body heat. The city's silver light filtered through the translucent walls, bathing them in shifting blues. Lay's breathing slowed beside him, her head resting on his chest. Dave stared at the ceiling, mind spinning faster than any con he'd ever run. He'd been with countless women across countless worlds, but never like this. Never with someone who made the truth feel dangerous. Then his eyes drifted to a faint glow at the far end of the room, a holographic console, active but idle. He frowned, curiosity biting through the haze of exhaustion. Quietly, he rose and approached. The screen flickered to life as it recognized her genetic signature. Project Veritas Behavioral Study, Human Deception Patterns. Subheader Subject Profiles. Unverified Operative, Dave Truman. Human male. For a moment, the air froze in his lungs. The screen showed data streams, his facial microexpressions, heart rate patterns, linguistic rhythm, analysis. Every word he'd spoken tonight recorded, dissected, cataloged. She'd been studying him. His reflection glimmered on the glass eyes, wide face pale in the blue light. He'd conned 100 people before, but this was different. He wasn't the hunter anymore. From behind him came her voice, calm, unhurried. Couldn't sleep. He turned. Lay stood at the doorway, wrapped in a shimmering robe, gaze unreadable. Just curious, he said. Impressive work, though I didn't realize I'd been promoted from guest to subject. Every guest is a subject to a scientist, she said simply, especially one who lies as beautifully as you do. Her tone wasn't mocking, it was admiring, and that terrified him more than anger would have. So that's what this is, he asked. Research. At first she admitted, but things evolve. He stepped closer. And which part of this evolved, the experiment or you? Lay didn't answer immediately. Her skin flickered, faintly shades of turquoise and silver warring beneath the surface, the Veritanian equivalent of emotional chaos. Both, she said finally, and that's what makes this dangerous. For a long moment they stood there, the air between them charged with something fragile, not trust, not deception, but the sharp tension of both. Dave exhaled slowly. You know, Professor, most people can't see through my lies, but you make me want to tell the truth, and that's the most dangerous thing of all. Lay's gaze softened. Then maybe that's why you're here. He didn't know whether to laugh or run. That night, while she slept, Dave lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced about her, about the data, about the trap he might already be in. For the first time in years, he couldn't tell whether he was still playing the game or if the game had finally learned to play him. And somewhere outside, beneath the pale twin moons, Veritania slept, unaware that the woman who studied truth and the man who lived in lies had just crossed a line that would change the planet forever. The next morning, the light filtering through Lay Nix's apartment felt colder than it should have. Dave Truman sat at the edge of the bed, shirt half buttoned, eyes fixed on the shimmering holographic interface that still displayed his biometric data. The words human deception patterns subject door 1 pulsed faintly in blue. He'd always believed he could control every narrative build, it twist, it survive it. But here in this place of unfiltered truth, his own fiction had wrapped around him like a snare. Lay moved quietly behind him, her bare footsteps whispering against the soft floor. You didn't sleep, she said. He turned slightly. Hard to rest when I find out I'm a case study. Her expression was unreadable, that same calm restraint that had intrigued him the first night they met. You're not the first human to lie, she said, but you're the first to do it so elegantly. I wanted to understand why. Because survival's an art form where I'm from, he replied bitterly. You tell people what they want to hear, and they give you what you need to live another day. Lay studied him, turquoise skin flickering faintly with empathy. Do you ever tell the truth? He smirked. You tell me, you've got the data. She didn't rise to the bait. There was a moment last night, she said softly when you stopped performing. I saw it, your breathing changed, your pulse steadied. You were telling the truth then. Dave looked away, tightening his collar. Maybe I just needed the lie to rest for a while. Silence stretched between them, charged, brittle, alive. Outside, the city glowed with the kind of innocent peace that made his guilt feel heavier. Lay, he said, finally, what are you going to do with this? Publish it, she said without hesitation. My people need to understand deception, not fear it. If we can recognize it, we can defend against it. Defend against it, he repeated. Or weaponize it. Her gaze didn't waver. That depends on what we learn. Something dark flickered behind his smile. Be careful, Professor. Once you start understanding lies, you can't go back to believing the world's as pure as you think. Later that day, Dave arrived at Torin Vex's corporate headquarters. The building was a vertical marvel of glass spiraling toward the sky like a frozen tornado. Inside, every surface gleamed with sterile honesty. Veritanian employees moved with robotic calm, each expression open and unguarded. Torin waited in his office, standing before a massive window overlooking the Capitol. His skin glowed faint green under the sunlight, and his voice carried that unnerving Veritanian calm. Agent Truman, he said, gesturing toward a seat, how goes your investigation into human behavior? Dave's instincts bristled. You've been keeping tabs. Information is truth, Torin said simply, and truth keeps civilization safe. Dave sat down, masking his unease. Your message said you had another security concern. Torin turned, hands clasped behind his back. Indeed, there's been unauthorized access to several defense databases. The system logs show activity from terminals that should be offline. My analysts believe it's a foreign attempt to compromise Veritania's shield network. Any suspect? None, Torin said smoothly. Until now. Dave frowned, meaning Torin's eyes met his. You. Dave almost laughed. You think I hacked your system? I think you have skills that fit the profile, Torin said calmly. And your arrival coincided precisely with the breach. Logic, not accusation. Dave leaned back, suppressing the urge to grin. If I were stealing your secrets, I wouldn't be sitting here discussing it. Torin smiled faintly. Precisely why you're valuable. You understand deception, how to wield it, how to spot it. That makes you indispensable. So this is a test, a partnership, Torin corrected. Find the real intruder, and if you succeed, I'll ensure your unorthodox methods remain undisclosed to the authorities. Dave studied him carefully. Torin's tone was steady, but something didn't add up. The man was too calm, too rehearsed, the Veritanian version of a poker face. All right, Dave said finally, I'll take the job. As he left the office, his communicator buzzed with a message. From Lay Nix, we need to talk. Privately. It's about Torin. That night, they met in a dimly lit archive hall beneath the Veritanian Institute of Behavioral Science. The walls glowed faintly with lines of text, historical records etched into the glass. I've been cross-referencing Torin's company data, Lay, began, her tone clipped and professional. He's been siphoning classified defense resources for months, redirecting them through civilian research networks. I suspect he's selling them off-world. Dave whistled low. So the honest businessman's got skeletons in his data vault. This isn't just corruption, Lay said. If he's compromised the planetary shield codes, he's jeopardizing the entire planet. The council must not know yet, they'd panic. So let me guess, Dave said, stepping closer. You want me to lie for you now? Lay hesitated, then nodded once. We can't expose him without proof, but the only way to get it is through deception. Dave grinned, that familiar rogue spark igniting behind his eyes. Finally, the good professor learns to sin. She met his gaze evenly. You'll teach me. He leaned in until their foreheads nearly touched. Lesson 1, a lie only works when you want to believe it yourself. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then she whispered, I'm ready. Their plan unfolded like choreography. Dave would infiltrate Torn's data center under the guise of an audit. Lay would manipulate internal systems posing as a consultant verifying emotional compliance metrics, Veritania's version of security clearance. It was dangerous, borderline suicidal. But as they moved through shadowed corridors, adrenaline pulsed like electricity between them. "Keep your breathing steady," Dave murmured. "Deception's not just in words, it's in rhythm. Truth has a heartbeat. Lies have a dance." Lay smiled faintly. "Then let's dance." Inside the facility, glass walls shimmered with active security displays. Every system pulsed in synchronicity. Truth measured in color, trust displayed as light. For Lay, each flicker was sacred. For Dave, it was camouflage. He connected his data pad to a terminal bypassing encryption with ease born of a lifetime of cons. "We're in." Lines of data cascaded across the screen. Torn's private transmissions, account logs, defense coordinates, enough evidence to bury him. Then a shadow flickered on the reflective surface of the glass wall. Dave's pulse spiked. "Someone's coming," he hissed. Lay tapped a sequence into her wristband, dimming the lights. "Hide," she whispered. A door hissed open. Torn Vex entered alone, silent, deliberate. Dave's instincts screamed. He should have known. The man had baited them. "I thought I'd find you here," Torn said evenly. "Professor Nix, and our charming human fraud." Lay straightened, defiant. "You're under investigation, Torn. We've seen your data." Torn's expression didn't change, but his tone sharpened. "You've seen what I allowed you to see. Every lie you tell here will only condemn you further." Dave stepped forward, blocking Lay behind him. Funny coming from the planet's most accomplished liar. Torn smiled faintly. "Liar no, Mr. Truman. I am evolution, the first Veritanian to choose deception. You humans didn't invent sin, you infected it." For a moment, silence filled the room. The weight of that statement almost physical. "Why?" Lay whispered. "Because truth stagnates," Torn said. "A species that cannot lie cannot grow. We need deceit, not chaos, but strategy. And I will be the one to guide that evolution." "You're selling them out," Dave snapped. "That's not evolution, that's betrayal." "Semantics," Torn replied coolly. "Every great transformation begins with betrayal." He turned toward the door. "Unfortunately, your discovery ends here." Two Veritanian security officers entered, their skin glowing red with programmed aggression. Dave's mind raced. No weapons, no escape, just lies. "Wait," he said loudly. "You can't kill us. Not here." Torn paused. "Why not?" "Because this room's live streaming to the Council's network," Dave said smoothly, pointing to the terminal. "Every word you've said is being recorded." It wasn't. But Torrin hesitated, and that hesitation was all Dave needed. He lunged, slamming the terminal's manual override, triggering a blackout. The room plunged into darkness. "Run," he shouted. Lay grabbed his hand, and together they bolted through the maintenance corridors, alarms echoing behind them. They didn't stop until they burst into the cool night air, hearts pounding, the city lights blazing below. Lay leaned against the wall, gasping. "You lied about the broadcast." Dave grinned between breaths. "You're learning fast, Professor." She laughed, breathless, shaken, alive. "You risked your life for a lie. For the truth it might buy," he said quietly. They stood there, the glow of Veritania's skyline reflecting in their eyes. For a moment, no words were needed. Lay touched his chest lightly. "Maybe deception isn't evil," she murmured. "Maybe it's evolution." Dave looked at her, the weight of everything between them pressing close. "Or maybe it's the only way to tell a truth no one wants to hear." And as the alarms wailed in the distance, the liar and the truth seeker shared a single unspoken realization. Their world was about to change forever. The city of Veritania glowed beneath the twin moons like a living crystal, but to Dave Truman and Lay Nix, its tranquil beauty was nothing more than a mirage. Somewhere inside those glass towers, Torrin Vex was preparing to vanish and to take his stolen secrets with him. They didn't have the luxury of time or allies. The Veritanian Security Directorate didn't believe them, and the Council still saw Dave as a charming fraud with a dangerous tongue. In a society built on truth, the liar had no credibility. That was about to change. "Your system access still works?" Dave asked, crouched beside a console in a dim service corridor. Lay's turquoise fingers danced over the holographic interface, her skin pulsing faintly with stress. "Torrin's people haven't revoked my credentials yet. They think I'm under his influence, a convenient assumption. Let's not prove them wrong too soon, he muttered. She shot him a glance, half amusement, half worry. You sound nervous. I'm allergic to dying for free, he said, flashing his crooked grin, especially on a planet that can't lie about how peaceful it is. Despite herself, she smiled. You hide fear well. Practice, he said. I grew up in places where fear gets you killed. So I learned to bury it under bad jokes and a nice suit. Lay hesitated, then said softly, and yet here you are risking everything for people who'd imprison you if they knew the truth. Yeah, he replied, focusing on the datapad. Guess I'm evolving too. Their target was Torrens' corporate headquarters, a fortress of glass and light transparent walls symbolizing purity, but hiding corruption within. Dave had memorized the security layout from the night they'd escaped. The top floor housed the executive servers isolated from the planetary network. That was where Torrens stored everything, contracts, codes, evidence, the digital skeleton of his lies. Lay would gain them access using her scientific clearance. Dave would handle the rest, the hacking, the bypassing, the improvising. It was, in a word, suicidal, but it was also perfect. Once we have proof, Lay said, adjusting her wristband, we take it straight to Director Norin. Assuming he doesn't arrest me first, Dave replied. Then we make him see the truth, she insisted. He smirked. You're finally talking like me. Don't get used to it, she said. I'm still allergic to hypocrisy. Inside the building, everything gleamed with quiet order. The lobby's walls shimmered with soft light that reflected the emotional states of everyone inside, pale blue for calm, amber for curiosity. Dave forced himself to breathe evenly. Any spike in adrenaline would change his color readings and trigger suspicion. Lay walked beside him, her tone calm, movements measured. Remember, she whispered, truth on Veritania isn't just in words. It's in your physiology. Keep your body honest, even if your words aren't. Great, he murmured. A lie that needs honesty, my favorite kind. They reached the lift. Lay scanned her wristband and the doors opened without protest. As the elevator ascended, transparent walls revealed the city sprawling below, perfect, peaceful, oblivious. Ever think about what happens if we fail? She asked quietly. I try not to make a habit of it, Dave said. I mean it. If Torren escapes with those codes, he could sell Veritania's defense systems to anyone. Pirates, warlords, even rival species who envy our resources. And if we succeed, then you'll still be a liar in a world that hates lies, she said. He smirked faintly. At least I'll be your liar. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. The executive level was eerily empty. Rows of glass offices shimmered under pale blue light. At the far end stood Torren's private chamber, a massive door sealed with biometric locks and truth verification scans. Lay approached the terminal, her hand steady. He programmed the system to respond to authorized emotional signatures, she said. It checks for patterns of sincerity. In other words, it won't open for anyone who's faking it. Exactly. Dave grinned. Good thing sincerity's one of my best lies. He stepped forward, placing his palm against the scanner. The machine whirred softly, scanning his pulse rhythm, vocal tones, microfacial tension. Access denied. Deceptive state detected. Lay frowned. It reads your stress as insincerity. I'm breaking into a criminal's lair while the air itself tattles on me, he muttered. Of course I'm stressed. Calm down, she said, touching his arm. Her fingers glowed faintly as her skin synchronized with his heartbeat. Let me help. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly, guiding him through rhythmic breathing. Dave felt his pulse slow, his chest loosen. Her calmness flowed into him like music. The scanner beeped again. Access granted. The door hissed open. Dave exhaled. Remind me to put that on my resume. You'd have to tell the truth for once, she said, smiling. Inside the chamber was a cathedral of data. Holographic pillars projected streams of glowing symbols that rotated like constellations. The air hummed with low resonance, the sound of pure information. Beautiful, Lay whispered. Expensive, Dave corrected. He plugged his data siphon into the main terminal. The device hummed softly, its green light pulsing in time with the system's heart. Once it's done, he said, we'll have everything. The stolen defense codes, the payment routes, the communications proof that Torren's been betraying this planet for months. Lay nodded, eyes gleaming with determination. And the council will finally have to see what truth looks like when it's ugly. Then the door hissed open behind them. Or when it's inconvenient, said a smooth, familiar voice. Torn Vex stood in the doorway, flanked by two Veritanian guards. His green skin glowed faintly in the room's light, his smile calm, precise, venomous. "Did you really think I'd let my favorite experiment run loose?" he said. "Professor Nix, your curiosity has always been admirable. And you, Mr. Truman, or should I say, the galaxy's most accomplished parasite, you've been fascinating to watch." Dave's hand hovered near the siphon. "You've been watching us." Torrin stepped closer. "Of course. Every lie you've told, every truth you've stumbled into. Humans are remarkable. Your deceit is an art form. I almost envy it." Lay's voice trembled. "You used us." Torrin smiled faintly. "No, my dear. You proved me right. Deception isn't corruption. It's progress. Your human lover here just taught me how to wield it." He gestured toward the guards. "Retrieve the device." Dave tensed. "You'll have to pry it from my—" Torrin raised a hand. "Stop pretending to be noble Truman. You lied for women and money. Now you can lie for survival." "Maybe I finally learned there's a difference," Dave said coldly. Torrin tilted his head. "And what's that?" "Intent." In one fluid motion, Dave grabbed the siphon and hurled it toward the glass wall. The device shattered data, scattering like fireflies. The guards lunged, but Dave had already pulled Lay behind a console. "Run," he shouted. They sprinted through the maze of glass alarms, shrieking. Security drones activated beams of blue light, scanning for deceit signatures. Lay gasped. "What now?" "We improvise," he said. "It's what liars do best." They burst into a corridor pursued by the rhythmic thud of drone stabilizers. Dave spotted an emergency hatch ahead. There. He slammed the release, and they tumbled into a maintenance shaft. The drones fired bolts of blue energy, searing the walls inches from their heads. Dave Lay shouted over the noise. "If we die—" "We won't," he snapped. "I still owe you a lecture on emotional dishonesty." They dropped into the lower level, a glass atrium overlooking the central plaza. Civilians below looked up in shock as alarms echoed through the city. Torrin's voice blared from speakers across the skyline. "Citizens of Veritania, the human deceiver and his accomplice are traitors. They seek to undermine our truth and destroy our harmony." The crowd gasped collectively, not from fear, but from confusion. Lies were alien to them, incomprehensible. Lay gripped Dave's arm. "He's turning the city against us." Dave's jaw tightened. "Then we changed the story." He climbed onto the edge of the atrium, overlooking the thousands of Veritanians gathering below. His voice cut through the noise, amplified by the hall's acoustics. "He's right," Dave shouted. "I am a liar." The plaza fell silent. Lay stared at him, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Ending the con," he said. He continued, voice steady, raw. "I lied to you all. I pretended to be a hero, an operative, a man of honor. But everything I did, every word was false. Except this, your precious Torrin Vex has been selling your world's defenses for profit. He lied too. The difference, he did it to control you. I did it to survive, and now to stop him." The crowd murmured, colors rippling across their skins, disbelief, fear awakening. "Check his records," Dave shouted. "You'll find everything in his systems. You'll see that truth itself can be twisted by those who worship it blindly." The plaza erupted in chaos. Security drones hesitated, unable to process conflicting truths. Torrin's voice snarled from the speakers. "Enough." He appeared at the edge of the atrium, weapon in hand. "You think they'll believe you, human?" Dave smiled grimly. "They already do." Torrin raised the weapon. A single energy shot rang out, but Lay lunged forward, knocking Dave aside. The blast hit her shoulder, sending turquoise light spraying across the glass floor. Dave caught her as she fell. "Hey, no, no, no." She looked up, her voice trembling. "Tell them the truth, Dave. Tell them what it means." Rage and grief collided inside him. He turned back to Torrin, eyes burning. "You wanted evolution. Here it is." He activated his wristband, a final override command he'd coded into the siphon's remains. The building's main servers flooded the city's information network, projecting every shred of evidence. Torrin's communications, his betrayals, his schemes across every public screen. The truth filled the sky. Torrin froze as the crowd's colors shifted, not to fear, not to confusion, but to realization. For the first time in Veritania's history, a lie had revealed the truth. Dave stepped forward. Looks like I'm not the only liar anymore. Torrin dropped his weapon, surrounded by Veritanian security. The system that worshipped truth had finally seen its first corruption and survived it. Dave knelt beside Lay, her breathing shallow but steady. She smiled weakly. That was a beautiful lie. He brushed her hair from her face. It wasn't a lie, not this time. The morning after the Plaza incident, Veritania was a planet divided. For the first time in its long and luminous history, the truth had been questioned, and it terrified them. The news rippled across every broadcast channel, every hollow screen, every public discussion forum. The people of Veritania had witnessed deceit in real time, and not from a human outsider, but from one of their own. Torrin Vex, the paragon of prosperity, the businessman they trusted implicitly, had used truth itself as camouflage for treason. And the man who exposed him was the one creature on the planet who could lie. Dave Truman sat alone in a sterile chamber within the Veritanian Security Directorate, a transparent cube hovering over the Capitol's skyline. He wasn't restrained. He didn't need to be. The guards outside the door had no weapons. They didn't believe they needed any. The irony wasn't lost on him. They still trusted in control through truth. The hum of the city outside was faint but constant. Hovercrafts glided through the skyways. The twin suns were rising. He'd slept maybe an hour slumped in the same chair, haunted by Lay's blood still staining his hands. She was alive, Norrin had told him, but in critical condition. He stared at his reflection in the glass wall, at the man who had lied his way through life, conned entire worlds, and somehow ended up the accidental savior of one that couldn't lie. He whispered, almost laughing, "Congratulations, Truman. You scammed yourself into a revolution." The door slid open with a soft chime. Director Norrin stepped in, tall, indigo-skinned, his presence as composed as always. He carried a small data pad, but his expression was different this time. Not suspicion, not hostility, something more complicated. "Mr. Truman," he began, his voice even, "your testimony is no longer required. The council has received the data you released. Torrin Vex has confessed." Dave blinked. "Confessed he can't lie." "Exactly," Norrin said. "Which makes his admission absolute truth, and that has changed everything." He set the data pad on the table and looked at Dave. "Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" Dave leaned back exhausted. "I broke your planet's religion." Norrin's jaw tightened slightly. "We prefer to call it social structure. But yes, your actions force Veritania to confront something we've never faced before, the possibility that truth can be manipulated without lies." "Welcome to humanity," Dave muttered. The director regarded him for a long moment. "When I first heard of your species' capacity for deception, I found it abhorrent. I considered it a flaw in your evolution. Now, I see it may also be your greatest strength." Dave smirked tiredly. "Careful, director. You're starting to sound like me." Norrin didn't smile. "Don't flatter yourself. Your methods are still criminal. But your results," he hesitated, choosing his words, "your results may have saved us." Hours later, they escorted Dave to the Grand Council chamber, a place he'd only seen from a distance, its architecture designed to reflect the very concept of transparency. Columns of glass and flowing light surrounded a circular platform at the center where the accused traditionally stood. Today it was his turn. The chamber was packed with Veritanian observers, their skin tones shifting in waves of emotion. For a society that had never held a trial for deceit before, this was history in motion. Lay Nix was there, too pale but upright, her shoulder bandaged, her posture regal despite exhaustion. When Dave's eyes found hers, she gave a small nod. It was all he needed to keep standing. The chief counselor, an elder with deep violet skin, addressed the assembly. "Dave Truman of Earth," he began, his voice resonating like a temple bell. "You stand accused of willful deception, identity fraud, and emotional manipulation of Veritanian citizens. Do you deny these charges?" Dave inhaled, then exhaled slowly. "No, I don't." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Disbelief, admiration, confusion. The counselor continued, "And yet, you also stand recognized for exposing the single greatest act of treachery in our planet's history. You revealed that truth unchallenged can be weaponized. That sincerity itself can serve deceit. How do you explain your actions?" human. Dave looked around the chamber, the sea of alien faces, the shifting glow of their skins, the weight of an entire civilization waiting for his words. I came here to lie, he said. Simply, that's what I do. It's what I'm good at. I lied for credits, for pleasure, for attention, because on my world, truth is a luxury and survival is a hustle. He paused, scanning their faces. But here, you made me realize something terrifying. Truth without challenge isn't virtue, it's vulnerability. You built a world where no one could deceive, so you never learned how to see deception. And that's why Torrin Vex almost destroyed you. Not because he lied, but because none of you knew what it looked like. The chamber fell silent. On Earth, Dave continued, we lie to each other all the time. Sometimes to hurt, sometimes to survive, sometimes even to protect. It's ugly, yes, but it teaches us something you never had to learn: doubt. And doubt, my friends, is the heartbeat of freedom. The crowd's color shifted again. Confusion, reflection, awe. He smiled faintly. You thought my species was dangerous because we can lie. You're wrong. What makes us dangerous is that we can choose not to. The chief counselor sat back contemplative. Then he turned to Lay Nix. Professor, as the foremost expert on interspecies behavioral ethics, what is your assessment of this human's paradox? Lay rose slowly, her turquoise skin shimmering softly beneath the chamber's lights. Her voice was calm, melodic, but carried the weight of conviction. Dave Truman is the embodiment of what we feared and what we need. His capacity for deception forced us to confront our complacency. He showed us that morality isn't built on the absence of lies, but on the courage to face them. She looked at Dave, then not as a scientist, but as something far more personal. I believe he acted not out of malice, but transformation. His lies may have begun as survival, but they ended as truth. Norrin stepped forward from the shadows. If I may, honored counsel, he said, bowing. Security Directorate records confirm that without Truman's intervention, Torrin's scheme would have succeeded. His actions, though unorthodox, preserve planetary integrity. The chief counselor raised an eyebrow. You advocate for clemency, Norrin nodded once. And more, the one. We propose that Mr. Truman's expertise be applied constructively. A hush swept the room. Lay smiled faintly. The directorate wishes to study deception, not to use it, but to recognize it, to prevent future threats. Dave Truman is the only being capable of teaching us how. The chief counselor regarded the human before him for a long, silent moment. Then he spoke. Dave Truman of Earth, in recognition of your crimes and the invaluable service you rendered in preventing planetary collapse, this council sentences you not to imprisonment, but to instruction. Dave blinked. Instruction? You will remain on Veritania for 5 cycles, the counselor declared. During that time, you will serve as consultant on deceptive strategy for the Security Directorate and assist Professor Nix in her continuing research on moral adaptability. Dave couldn't help but grin. So I'm being punished by being forced to teach honesty through lying. The counselor's lips curved slightly, the Veritanian equivalent of amusement. Precisely. Consider it poetic justice. After the trial, as the chamber emptied, Lay approached him. You did it, she said softly. He chuckled. You make it sound like I meant to. You did more than survive, she said, stepping closer. You changed us. You changed me. He tilted his head. Careful, Professor. You're starting to sound like a human. Her smile deepened. Maybe that's not a bad thing. He looked at her for a long moment, then touched her bandaged shoulder gently. How's the wound? Better, she said. Hurts less than the first time you lied to me. Yeah, he murmured, smiling softly. That one still stings for me, too. For a moment, silence filled the air, the kind of silence that carried meaning instead of absence. Then she said, So, Consultant Truman, what will you do with your new job? He looked out at the horizon where Veritania's twin suns blazed above the crystal spires. Teach a world that's never doubted how to question, he said, and maybe teach myself how to stop running from the truth. That night, as he sat by the window of Lay's apartment, the same one where he'd first seen the galaxy through her eyes, he felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. Not because he'd been forgiven, but because for once the truth and the lie inside him had made a fragile kind of truce. Outside, Veritania shimmered, wounded, wiser, alive. And somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of chimes drifted through the air. Lay joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. You know, she said softly, on my planet, truth is considered sacred. Yeah, he murmured. On mine, it's negotiable. She smiled against him. Maybe between us, we'll find the balance. He looked at her, a hint of a grin breaking through. Careful, Professor. You're starting to sound like a liar. She met his gaze, eyes shining. Only when I talk to you. And for the first time in his life, Dave Truman, professional liar, accidental hero, didn't feel the need to hide behind words. Because on a planet where truth was law, he'd finally learned that honesty wasn't about what you said. It was about what you chose. The stars above Veritania had never looked brighter. For a world built on perfect honesty, this new era shimmered with contradiction and hope. Every day the planet's news feeds pulsed with debate. Philosophers questioned the moral fabric of truth. Economists restructured contracts to account for potential misdirection. Children in schools were taught the strange new concept of doubt. And at the center of it all was a human who had lied his way into history. Dave Truman adjusted the collar of his black and blue uniform, the official attire of his new role, special consultant on deceptive strategy. The badge on his chest shimmered with Veritanian symbols that translated roughly to truth's shadow. He'd laughed when they first gave it to him. Now he wore it with an odd sense of pride. The work wasn't easy. Every meeting with Veritanian officials felt like teaching fish how to breathe air. They didn't get manipulation, their minds rejected it instinctively. Every training simulation turned into an existential crisis. This exercise is disturbing, said one blue-skinned officer after a briefing. You expect us to pretend to deceive. Exactly, Dave said, pacing before the projection screen. If you can't lie, then learn to spot one. Think of it as empathy stepping into the mind of a manipulator. Try to understand the rhythm of uncertainty. But uncertainty feels wrong, the officer protested. Dave grinned. That's how I know you're learning. He was building something Veritania had never known, a department of strategic integrity where truth and deception existed in balance, where honesty wasn't blind faith, but a conscious choice. Still late at night, when the lessons ended and the city dimmed, he couldn't shake the thought that he didn't belong. He was still an outsider, the liar who'd broken their paradise. And the only person who truly understood that paradox was Leigh Nix. Leigh had recovered fully, her turquoise skin vibrant again, though a faint scar traced her shoulder, a reminder of the night truth almost died. Her research flourished like wildfire. The ethics of adaptive honesty. Her landmark thesis had become the foundation for Veritania's new academic field. She credited it to joint collaboration with consultant Truman, though Dave knew she'd done most of the thinking. She was still the scientist, always curious, always precise, but something in her had changed. Her eyes held mystery now, the faint shimmer of someone who'd tasted ambiguity and found it intoxicating. One evening, she found Dave sitting on the rooftop terrace watching the twin moons drift apart. Still afraid of heights, she teased. He smiled without looking up. Still afraid of falling. Those aren't the same thing. On Earth they are. She joined him, folding her legs beside him on the transparent ledge. The city below glowed like liquid glass. You're quiet lately, she said. Unusual for a man who used to talk his way out of gravity itself. He chuckled softly. Just wondering how long this will last. What? This peace, the admiration, the whole honorary hero thing, it feels fragile. Fragile things can still be beautiful, she said, and they remind us to handle them carefully. He turned to her, then really looking at her. You've changed. So have you. Yeah, he said, leaning back. I used to think truth was a sucker's game, that the only way to survive was to control the story. And now, he exhaled, smiling faintly. Now I think the best stories are the ones that tell themselves even if they make you the villain first. Leigh tilted her head. That sounds like redemption. Or irony, he said. I can never tell the difference. Weeks passed. Veritania was transforming faster than anyone expected. Truth tribunals evolved into transparency forums where citizens openly debated intent versus honesty. New laws were drafted not to punish lies but to weigh motives. For the first time, Veritanians learned to hide not out of deceit but self-preservation. They began experimenting with diplomacy, negotiation, even strategy. And every ripple led back to one man, the human who lied. Yet Dave refused the fame. He kept to his work, teaching, testing, observing. because somewhere deep down he feared that the moment they stopped questioning him, they'd start worshiping him. And that was a lie he couldn't live with. One morning, Director Noran summoned him to the council headquarters. "The ambassadors from the Zathari system have arrived," Noran said. "You've read their file." Dave nodded grimly. The Zathari were a species infamous for weaponized deceit. Masters of doublespeak, their entire culture revolved around manipulation. A single treaty with them had doomed empires before. "And you want me in the room," Dave said. Noran clasped his hands. "We want you to help us survive it." Dave chuckled. "No pressure." The council chamber shimmered with dignified calm as the Zathari delegation entered, tall, sleek beings with scales that changed color like oil on water. Their leader, Ambassador Vec, bowed deeply, in honor to visit the realm of truth. Dave caught the faintest smirk. "Here we go." Lay sat beside the council as an observer, her eyes flicking between Dave and the ambassador. Vec began the meeting with honeyed words, praising Veritania's virtue, lauding their transparency, flattering their innocent wisdom. Dave watched every movement, every micro-expression, every linguistic trap. Then when Vec paused for breath, Dave stood. "Ambassador," he said smoothly, "you flatter us beautifully, almost too beautifully." The Zathari smiled. "Is flattery not a form of truth, Mr. Truman?" "Only if you mean it," Dave said, pacing slowly. "And I think you mean something else entirely." The room shifted. Veritanian counselors exchanged nervous glances. They weren't used to confrontation masked in civility. Vec's eyes glittered. "Perhaps you misunderstand our culture. We see truth as fluid, adaptable." "Yeah," Dave said, smiling coldly. "That's what every liar says before they sell you a bomb disguised as a handshake." The words hit like thunder. Veritanians gasped. Vec's composure flickered, scales rippling silver, a sign of irritation. Lay's voice was calm but firm. "Ambassador Vec, if truth is adaptable, then surely you won't mind adapting it for our records. Please tell us what you truly seek in this alliance." For the first time, Vec hesitated. His diplomatic mask cracked not from exposure, but from being understood. After that, the rest unfolded quickly. The Zathari proposal, a resource exchange treaty, was revealed as a cover for siphoning Veritania's planetary data infrastructure. By the end of the meeting, the council had voted unanimously to end negotiations. And as Vec's delegation left in quiet fury, Noran turned to Dave. "You predicted every move." Dave shrugged. Takes one to know one. That night, the city was alive with celebration. Veritania had faced its first diplomatic deception and won. But Dave avoided the festivities. He found himself on the same observation balcony where he'd first met Lay months ago. The city lights shimmered below, painting his face in shades of blue and gold. Lay found him there as always. "You saved us again," she said softly. He didn't look at her. "I just taught you how to play dirty without losing yourself." She smiled faintly. "Isn't that the definition of humanity?" He chuckled. "If it is, we charge extra for lessons." They stood there side by side in the alien glow. The silence between them was no longer awkward. It was something sacred. "You know," Lay said finally, "Veritania has begun to see lies differently. Don't tell me I've started a fashion trend. More like a philosophy," she said. "They're calling it the doctrine of chosen truth. It's based on your principle that truth is most powerful when it's chosen over deceit, not forced by nature." Dave whistled softly. "Sounds poetic." "It's also terrifying," she admitted. "Choice means chaos, mistakes, imperfection." He turned to her, then smiling gently. "Welcome to being human." Lay met his gaze, eyes glowing faint blue. "You've given us something dangerous." "I gave you freedom," he said. "What you do with it, that's your story now." Weeks later, the council formally announced the founding of the Veritanian Human Institute for Moral Adaptation. Lay was appointed director. Dave refused any title higher than consultant, though he secretly wrote most of the curriculum. Their work became legend. Other worlds began to take notice. Humans weren't just interlopers anymore. They were teachers of the one skill no other species dared master: the art of honest deceit. One evening, as they closed the Institute's first session, Lay lingered by the window. The twin moons cast pale light across her features. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked quietly. Dave looked at her for a long time, once or twice. "But then I remember the view. And the woman she teased." "That too," he said with a grin. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining like two worlds finally learning the same rhythm. As dawn rose over Veritania, the city glowed in the hues of awakening, the soft golds of truth, the deep blues of doubt. Dave Truman, the conman turned consultant, the liar who taught a civilization to see itself, stood at the edge of the balcony, breathing in the scent of alien air. He thought of his past lives, his scams, the faces he'd fooled. None of them mattered anymore, because this time he hadn't lied to win. He'd lied to teach them how to choose. Lay joined him, her voice soft against the hum of the morning. Do you think they'll ever stop needing you? He smiled, watching the sunrise. Maybe, but not until they learn the same truth I did. She tilted her head. And what's that? That sometimes, he said, you have to lie to discover who you really are. Lay laughed, bright, musical, alive. That sounds like a very human thing to say. He turned to her, eyes warm. Oui. Because I finally like being one. And as the first light of Veritania's new age washed over them, the liar and the truth seeker stood together, proof that even the most flawed hearts could build something real. Something honest.